You're listening to This Week in America with Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us. As mentioned, an interesting program today. Our guest is Patrick Andendall. He's always had an interest in politics and being multicultural. He views issues from a more international perspective. In 2004, 5 days before the election, he flew to Cleveland, pitched in to help with his political process there. We'll talk about it on today's program. What he discovered was the dissolution of the American dream, which he writes about in his book that we're discussing on today's show, Stupid Party. Andendall was educated at English boarding schools from the age of 7 through 18, the final 5 years at Lansing College, respected English high school with its impressive literary and religious heritage, also known for its stunning chapel sitting atop the Sussex Downs. Leaving school, he immediately started work, sometimes holding 3 jobs at once, a trainee underwriter claim broker at Lloyd's of London, running his own one-man cleaning company, in fact, cleaning the very offices of a reinsurance company he would transact business with at a later time, plus doing seasonal work at various farms, having made some windfall profits after borrowing money to be a stag, that's short-term speculator, taking advantage of opportunities created by Margaret Thatcher's denationalization policies of the mid-'80s. Patrick evolved into an entrepreneur with a core specialty in reinsurance in London and New York, where he looks for patterns in numbers. Self-employed in a field not normally conducive to self-employment, he is able to remain in control, juggle different jobs, travel, as well as pursue his various interests, ending up in New York via romance in the African bush. Patrick now lives in Long Island with his wife, 2 children, and a couple of dogs with him as well. With us on the program today, Patrick Andendall. The book is Stupid Party, Math v. Myth. Patrick, welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us on the show. Looking forward to our discussion.
Yeah, good afternoon. It's very good to talk to you.
I think that whole background is really important to tell us who you are, and somebody may go, Stupid Party, he's making fun of the Republican Party, and why would I even listen to him? This really is not a contentious book. In fact, you consider yourself a conservative, and Stupid Party came out of a Bobby Jindal speech. Talk about the origination of Stupid Party.
Well, first of all, yes, you're right. I don't think it is contentious. And if you look at the reviews, people aren't accusing me of being opinionated. I've avoided opinions at all points in time. And probably 80% of Americans would agree with 90% of what I have to say in the book. So it's actually very mainstream. But of course, we're dealing with such a radicalized base that's driving what I call the Stupid Party, that really facts are being lost under the burden of myth. And I think it's very transparent. And I don't think that somebody from the opposing view could come close to writing a book like this. Anybody who thinks it's both sides are guilty, those very same people are guilty of false equivalence. One party is clearly off the rails, and the other party is struggling to remain on the rails.
You know, it's interesting because you talk about we really need 2 parties. The country needs 2 parties. As you're reading the book, and the first couple of chapters are devoted to quotes from people. Here's one, Kay Bailey Hutchinson, who many would consider to be a reasonably moderate, retired now senator from Texas, who said we had some candidates who got very high profile and said some very stupid things. And that's sort of the basis of what we'll be talking about on the program today. I want to talk about the format of the book, first of all, because that's important. The book is called Stupid Party, Math v. Myth, and the website is stupidpartymathvmyth.com. I've got both versions of the book. I've got the paperback of the book, the regular printed book, and then I've got the ebook. And the ebook is really, and I think you'll talk about this and agree, is really the way to do it because you've got a couple thousand links and graphs and charts that with the ebook, they really come alive. And there's something about visualization when we can actually see the point you're attempting to make.
Well, you know, a lot of people, and people like myself, we still prefer to have a hard copy in our hands. And all the time I was designing and writing this book, it actually never occurred to me that a print version would be feasible, because when I checked it out online, to print out a color book, and I checked out how much they would charge to print it through Create Space, the number was a minimum of $30 for a print book, and obviously Amazon takes a 50% margin, so you'd have to retail at $60, $70. So it never occurred to me that we would find a way of having a print book until like 2 weeks before publication. And then we found a workaround, so we can offer the book for $22, or whatever it is. But anybody who buys that, it's the intent that they can have the ebook for free. Yes, because it has 1,500 hyperlinks. It's got videos. I'm particularly proud of what I call my rusty red links. So if I'm dealing with a subject that either is sometimes too complex to get into the detail, I'll revert to a usually humorous or poignant video in order to prove my point. I wanted to get down and dirty into mortgage-backed securities, which nobody's that interested in learning about, was critical to the financial meltdown of 2008. So to get around that, an issue that not many people understand, not even the people who trade the securities really understand it, I revert to an 8-minute video by 2 comedians, and they explain the issue really funnily, really succinctly, and you'll walk away from that video knowing almost as much about mortgage-backed securities as the people who trade them.
You know, it's interesting, and it's all in the book, Stupid Party Math v. Myth, and that's also the website. And you can link on to get all of Patrick's information by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. In the beginning, I had mentioned you went to Cleveland to be part of the process for the 2004 election. Really disillusioned with what you saw there, and it was alarming. Talk about what you found when you were actually on the ground in Cleveland, Election Day 2004.
Well, first of all, I had figured out mathematically that Cleveland was the place to be for that election. It was ground zero for the whole planet because it was such an important election. You know, by that point in time, people should have figured out that the Iraq War was sort of unnecessary, with the country being misled into the war on the basis of falsified information. Yet 2/3 of the Republican Party at that point in time believed that Saddam Hussein attacked us when clearly he did not. So I'd figured Cleveland was the area, and actually Karl Rove had come to the same conclusion, and that's where he was hanging out on those final hours and days of the election. So what I found was really depressing, especially the election night. It was pouring with rain. I'd been working in some of the, obviously, urban areas where you bring out the vote, minority black housing development areas where many people would have been, like myself, would normally have been rather trepidatious about entering, especially at dusk. But I found the people there to be wonderful, welcoming, surprised to see me, because I'd gone in with the attitude, you know, people were willing to fight overseas for what they believe in. At least I could do was to waltz into some of these areas and try and get out the vote. And I got a very good response from people. But what was happening that night in particular was it was pouring with rain. And the lines, I saw the lines around Cleveland were massive, horrendous. And those lines had been designed to be massive and horrendous by withdrawing, I believe, polling booths from urban minority areas. That was why Karl Rove was there working with whoever the Secretary of State was, whose name escapes me. And these people who work in these housing states, these voters, they got a lot of problems. They're struggling with eviction notices. Their kids are falling prey to drug-type issues and stuff like that. The mothers and the fathers, you know, they're trying to work, or maybe not working, but they can't spend 5 hours in a line to vote. There are just too many crises that they're fighting with day in, day out, and they're never listened to, they're never respected, and so they probably think, you know, what's the point? Yes, somebody like myself can motivate a few of them to go out and do the right thing, but it really is hands-on, one at a time. And when you have that sort of weather and you have the voters treated in that despicable manner, it's voter suppression, it's very depressing. You know, I've since looked at the numbers on voter suppression. Voter suppression is allowed, you know, people have it because they argue about that there's voter fraud, but I actually have a blog and my book discusses it. Voter fraud is mathematically irrelevant. Therefore, if you support voter suppression, you're doing it based on ignorance or prejudice.
Well, it's interesting because in the book, stupid party positions are defrocked, and that's one of a number of topics where you go through. You do it very logically, very rationally, using actual numbers. The name of the book is StupidParty Math v. Myth.com. You talk about the 2008 election, and maybe a Google search would have come up with a different vice presidential candidate for the Republican nominee at the time. You talk about 2012 and tweeting. Let's talk about who actually is controlling the dialogue, who's spinning the narrative here. And you talk about it's basically what a small number of people, and you call them the puppet masters, that are really manipulating the majority of people.
Well, yeah, there's stunning amounts of money in American politics. And obviously, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand money corrupts. The more money you have, the more corrupt the system is. So if you take, and clearly congressmen do not listen to the interests of their voters or their people in their districts. So if you take an example, I take an example of, say, maybe coal mining diseases. Obviously we all know that, coal mines and gold mines, they need to be regulated for clean air. And you do that because otherwise people will die within 10 years. So if there's an outbreak of a disease in England, it's called, you go to your MP, your member of parliament, and the member of parliament would look at the statistics and say, you're right, there seems to be a hotspot of people getting sick. Maybe we should inspect the mines and see if they're in compliance with regulations, or are the regulations sufficient? So that's what would happen in a normal country. What happens here is that if you see a hotspot, theoretically, I'm not saying this has specifically happened, the congressman, his campaign has been financed by the coal mining owners. So he, instead of being interested in finding out why there'd be a hotspot in the coal mine, the congressman is going to turn the story around and say, look, we cannot afford to have proper regulations. We cannot afford to have air purifiers in the mines because that would make us uncompetitive and you would lose your job. So you see how they turn around a public health issue based on money. So the prism of a fact changes and they put the onus and the blame on the workers, and the people who own the coal mines, who are contributing to the campaign, they're off the hook.
And I believe if you keep saying it enough, then people start believing it. I'm going to get to the Fox News failed. Yeah,
they'll blame anybody but the truth. They'll blame immigrants. They'll blame liberals. They'll blame anything but the fact that coal mine needs to be inspected, and you need to see if they're obeying regulations.
You're listening to This Week in America. Our guest on the program is Patrick Andendall. He's the author of the book Stupid Party Math v. Myth. His website is stupidpartymathvmyth.com. A lot of great information available there. If you're just joining us, the book was not meant to be contentious. He is a conservative who is concerned about a two-party system here in the United States. You talk in, I think this was a mythical case, but a Palm Beach cocktail party with some of the people that are actually the puppet masters doing the manipulation. And you say they wouldn't be quite dead rubbing shoulders with the Tea Party, the very protesters they're using and created. And when you think about it, that's exactly the case.
Yeah, I have a pet peeve about Palm Beach. I'm sorry. It goes back way before even my political opinions. I visited the place, 15 years ago, and was sort of horrified by the feel of it, the exclusivity, and what to me struck me as a very sad looking beach. But, since then, I'm looking at Palm Beach. It's a very interesting area. On the one hand, certain travel magazines or domestic ones have called it the best place to live in the United States. So it begs the question in my mind, is it the best place to live in the United States, or is it the worst place to live in the United States? And if you look at the sheer congregation of billionaire, and not that all billionaires are bad, only half of them are bad. Some billionaires either care about humanity or they don't. And the ones that don't care about humanity seem to congregate in amazingly concentrated numbers in Palm Beach. So if you want to go and raise tons of money, you go to Palm Beach. And yes, these cocktail parties, they're not going to want anybody from the Stupid Party disciple base to be visiting them at all. You only get into Palm Beach as a landscaper, your gardener, your shoes, polishing your shoes or whatever it is. They have no interest at all in the people.
It's interesting, and you make a case and you go through, and these are some of the positions defrocked: the moochers, the economy, climate change, gun control, environmental stewardship, racism, religion, freedoms, guns, ignorance-based humor. All of those done in a very logical, rational manner in Stupid Party Math v. Myth. The website is stupidpartymathvmyth.com. You talk about guns, for example, and you go through the NRA and the position they have, and most people, survey after survey, really would like to see some rational gun control legislation, not taking guns away from people, but something that's rational, basically driven by what's happening in society. Yet, as soon as you mention that, you've got these people yelling and screaming. Isn't that a perfect example of what you're talking about with the puppet masters? And all of a sudden, you've got people maybe even voting and acting against their own self-interest because they're worked into this position.
Yeah, I would estimate that maybe 80% of the members of the NRA are perfectly reasonable people willing to have a reasonable conversation. But what the membership of the NRA does not understand is that they think they're in a democratic organization, but they're not. The NRA is run by a 9-person nominating committee. That nominating committee gets to decide who's put on the board, not the membership. And the nominating committee and the NRA has been hijacked by far-right type individuals and the gun manufacturing industry. So that is why you get nothing intelligent out of the NRA. NRA members need to leave the NRA and join another gun advocacy group.
You know, and I see this all the time with the emails that I get on a daily basis, and it comes from both sides, where they will take something in the news. Some cases it's straight, other times they enhance it some, and use it for fundraisers. So whenever there's like a major issue out there, it seems like it becomes a massive fundraising campaign for the next 24 hours.
Well, fear and bigotry excite the base, and that's how you raise a ton of money. I mean, in Indiana, you find it yourself, the Pizzagate people, even though they may or may not have been, in their minds, honest Christians, although I discuss Christianity in my book, and I would not call them Christians. But they raised political operatives on behalf of the Republican Party to make it a story. They've already raised $800,000 to those pizza owners. Now, I take heart in the fact that the government will probably get half of that back from the idiots who contributed to those guys.
Yes.
And most people, mathematically, who win the lottery, which is what they've effectively done, they end up in worse financial shape 2 years later than before they won the lottery. But, you know, a real Christian would follow the teachings of Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ was not a bigot. He was not a misogynist. He was actually quite a good guy.
Patrick Andendall is our guest on the program, author of the book Stupid Party Math, vmyth.com, Unmasking the Destructive Forces Eroding American Democracy. The book's available at his website, stupidpartymathvmyth.com. Also, all the usual places. Would recommend the ebook because it's very interactive. You will find links and graphs and charts and videos that will help you understand what he's talking about. A couple of minutes left in the program, and we'll have Patrick back on the show. How do we break free of this? Well, let's throw the Fox News in here because a lot of people will say, but I was watching Fox News and this is what they're telling me. Is Fox News a fallacy?
Well, obviously Fox News is a fallacy. That it's not news, it's propaganda. It is an arm of the Republican Party. Rupert Murdoch and Roger Ailes have an agenda, and if you don't follow Roger Ailes' agenda specifically, he's more fanatical than Rupert Murdoch, you will not have a job at Fox. And study after study after study proves that if you watch Fox News every day, you get more uninformed about the issues that they want you to be uninformed about than by not watching any news at all.
You know, what's interesting with the book Stupid Party is when you heard all, and I went through the whole topics here, the economy, the moochers, climate change, you heard what was out there, what the narrative was, and you went and did the research, objective research, and found out this really isn't the case. In the book, it goes, in one of the chapters, how far down the rat hole have you been led? And how stupid party are you? It's an excellent book. A minute or so left in the program. What do people need to do to break out of this? And again, this is not an indictment of all of the Republican Party. You're doing this out of concern, out of democracy. And you've seen what's happened in England, and you need a vibrant conservative party. What can people do? Does it start with keeping an open mind and researching something before you form an opinion?
I think what we have to do is I think we have to understand that 67% of people who vote for the Republican Party at the moment are not engaging in critical thinking, and to expect myself to get them to come out of their cave or anybody else is not going to happen as long as they keep winning elections. They're going to carry on listening to Fox News and carry on in their mythical world. That leaves 1/3 of Republicans who are capable of critical thinking. And I estimate that half of those people care a damn and the other half don't. So that leaves 15%, 16%. And you have to ask why these 15, 16% of people who are capable of critical thinking do care about other people other than themselves, where are they going wrong and why are they voting the way they vote. And I think the two reasons for that might be explained by they fall for false equivalency, thinking both sides are as bad as each other, both sides lie equally, which they do not. The Republican Party lies 500% more often, and when they lie, their lies are more egregious. And the other problem is a lot of people are just too busy to get to know the facts, to find the facts, to do the research, to see through the false equivalency. It takes time, it takes effort. It takes people like me who can take time off my regular day job to work on this product. So those are the people who have to be targeted. Republican critical thinkers who can think about other people other than themselves. Trickle-down economics does not work in the American context. The income discrepancy trends for the last 30 years are outrageous, and they're not mathematically sustainable. It will either lead to oligarchy, which many people argue we already have, or lead to civil unrest.
Got about a minute left, and not enough time to talk about this, but Patrick will be back on the program. So many will say if you are a moderate, even right of center Republican, it is so difficult for you to win a primary election. In the case of 2016, we're looking at the presidential race, because it's just the right-wing core that goes out and motivated to vote in the primary. Is that true? Does that keep a lot of the centrist, reasonable politicians away from running? And we're seeing more and more senators and congressmen that they don't want to fight the battle anymore. They're just retiring and going into the private sector.
Well, clearly the problem with gerrymandering...
a whole other issue, yes.
The problem with gerrymandering is you make safe seats everywhere, and if you're a safe seat, you don't need to reach out to anybody. And I've forgotten the other part of your question. What were you saying?
Well, it's just in the primary, it seems like if you took a moderate stance, a reasonable stance, you're probably not going to get the nomination. You're not going to win. Maybe, but
you have to ask, why did the Democrats do so badly in the midterms? Yes, I understand that have a low voter turnout in midterm elections. But really, they were running from the president. They were running from an amazing track record of bringing down unemployment way faster than Mitt Romney ever said he would do. The auto industry has been saved. The amount of people uninsured for medical insurance is dropping dramatically from what it otherwise have been. People's lives have been saved by healthcare. He's embarked upon a foreign policy which means that America is no longer the policeman of the world. He's gotten other countries to take the lead in various foreign policy issues, whether it be the UN and the French taking on Libya and Mali. Now you've got the Arab countries taking the lead and taking on ISIS. I mean, in the past, it would have just been the American army floundering in, killing lots of people, getting lots of Americans killed. Now we have a foreign policy built upon an international community at work. The negotiations with Iran are very much typical of that. This is the international community been working for the last 8 years. Sanctions are working on Iran, and yet you have the stupid party trying whatever they can do to dismantle this peace talks so they can go to war with Iran because they're in the pocket of Netanyahu. And those politicians, those 47 senators, are being paid off by big money. Alan Cotton was his name?
Ted?
Sorry?
Ted Cotton, I believe.
The leader of how did he just look to see how he got elected to be senator in a swing state, where the money came from. So this is money and it's bigotry leading to this Republican love affair with Israel. There are 28 Jewish Democratic people in Congress. There's one Republican. And the one that they had before the election, Eric Cantor, he had admitted there was strong anti-Semitism in the Republican Party. And yet suddenly they're in love with Israel. It's all about hatred for Obama, it's about bigotry, and it's about money.
We have so much to talk about in show number 2, and I'm looking forward to that. Patrick Andendall, our guest on the program. The book is Stupid Party Math v. Myth. His website is stupidpartymathvmyth.com. If you just joined us in the program, Patrick is a conservative concerned about having a viable two-party system here in the country. The book is excellent. It is well researched. It is well documented. It is interactive. It's actually fun at times because you can learn things about topics that you really didn't understand fully before. It's an excellent book, Stupid Party Math v. Myth. The website, stupidpartymathvmyth.com. Patrick, great having you with us on the program. Look forward to having you back. Much to think about and much more to talk about. Thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure. You're listening to This Week in America, and of course, all the information on today's program, and you can link directly to Patrick's website at our website, thisweekinamerica.us.